2, 1. All right, I'm Ant Walker with Sherdog.com. I'm here with the homie Casper of Submission Radio, and we are here in Anaheim for UFC 241. A lot of big stuff to talk about. Pretty exciting card up ahead. Casper, let's first start talking about the main event.
There's a lot to talk about, but it's lonely. Oh, who's this guy right here?
Wait a minute, guys. What are you doing here? Dennis here from Submission Radio, and why not join one of the hottest shows and biggest websites and biggest names in the MMA community? My man Anthony right here as we break down UFC 241 in Anaheim, California. What's going on, guys?
All right, so obviously got the crew out, and the heavyweight title fight, Daniel Cormier, Stipe Miocic, in a rematch. I'm pretty excited about this one, but I have a feeling that things might be just a little bit different than Daniel Cormier knocking out Stipe Miocic in the first round. So, Dennis, please give me your take on this. What do you think happens?
Well, I think what happens is we sort of see what DC has been able to do, and we're kind of blind to the fact that this weekend he may very well lose and retire in the octagon with a Stipe loss, and maybe not a John Jones fight, or maybe not a Brock Lesnar fight, or whatever other fight that we thought he'd go out on top with his hand raised. The thing is, Stipe has made some errors in that first fight. He was too close. DC was able to land his strikes. There were some eye pokes, whatever. Going into this one, he's going to be keeping his distance. He's going to be using his footwork. He's going to try and make this a longer fight where he moves in and out of range, lands his shots, and gets out of there before DC can land those power shots. He knows DC has power, and he's going to stop him from landing it. And we know that DC has had heaps of health issues. He's come in light for his fight. Javier Mendez told us that it took them 6 weeks to get down in weight before DC started looking good again. So even though a lot of people are saying, all right, this guy's coming in light because he wants an advantage and probably will be a longer fight, a big part of it also has to do with this guy's coming in light so his body functions and he's able to fight. You know, losing those 10, 20, 30 pounds will make it a lot easier for him to last those 5 rounds physically. So we're not talking about technique-wise. We're not talking about, him being quick or anything like that. I'm talking about him surviving those 5 rounds and not his back not giving away. You know what I mean? Right. When this guy fought Derek Lewis, he almost pulled out of the fight
for a sneeze.
And he's gotten that back fixed up, but he's got some arthritis and a whole sort of bunch of issues as well. And on top of that, where's the motivation? He's already won the title. He says the motivation is because Stipe has been talking, but we know that he's got multiple opportunities to have great careers outside of the octagon, make huge money. So really, outside of the money, I just don't see what sort of brings out the best Daniel Cormier this weekend.
I mean, I got to say legacy would be an issue for him, and that's something that he said a lot. That's a word that's been used frequently by Cormier in the lead up to this fight. And, where does a win over Stipe for a second time, what does that do for his legacy?
I don't think it'll do a whole lot, to be honest. Daniel Cormier was saying to us that he kind of feels like the world thinks that that first fight was a bit of a fluke. I don't really think so. I think that, this sentimentality after a while kind of goes away, and in the end, all that's left is the record. And the record is DC beat Stipe, and I think that's kind of what everybody sort of focuses on. And the narratives afterwards weren't, he got lucky. It was that he looks so much better at heavyweight. He's the best heavyweight of all time. He's on the pound-for-pound list. So I don't think it would really add a whole lot, to be honest. At this point.
And I think if it was a Francis Ngannou or someone else, that adds to his legacy because it's sort of another name. But if he loses against Stipe, well, this is a guy that he's already beaten, so then it's kind of like, it probably detracts if he loses, and if he wins, it's like, well, you just beat a guy that you destroyed in that first fight. You know what I mean? Right. And that's how sort of fans think. If we're looking at like a general fan.
If it goes to a decision, then it's like, well, last time you floored this guy in 4.5 minutes.
It's kind of tough if you destroy someone so quickly. The expectations are so high that even if he goes out there
and finishes him in the second round
or the third round,
right.
if this is DC fighting hypothetically a better Stipe and he goes to the decision, the narrative will probably be like, I don't know, DC's getting older. He's not the same guy that he was, a year ago.
And don't forget, with Stipe, he's been away for a year. He's been dealing with his family. They'll be like, oh, and this is a guy that's been out of the game for a year. And you know what I mean? So there's going to be stuff like that going around.
Well, here's the interesting wrinkle about this because, of course, Cormier came in lighter and he looks more slender. And Matt Hunter, who's behind the camera right now and joining me with Sherdog.com, he was saying like, hey, DC looks like he's cutting weight right now. He looks tired, has a weight cut look about him. Yeah. He comes in smaller. He looks more slender. But Stipe, once again, weighs less than him going into the heavyweight title fight. So where Daniel Cormier would think to have an advantage with the speed, again, and being the smaller guy and maybe using the mobility as a big advantage, and being able to last the distance, a small, excuse me, a smaller, more slender Stipe could pose some problems. I'm very intrigued about what happens in this fight, and I'm sure everybody's going to be excited about the results in the cage. But let's talk about what probably would be the people's main event in this one. Nate Diaz returns after a nearly 3-year-long layoff against the former WEC and UFC lightweight champion Anthony Pettis. I'm beyond stoked for this one. And I think this is one of those times where it's hard to suppress the fanboy and just focus on being a professional, because this is such a rich fight with action. Casper, do you think this 3 years off for Nate Diaz is going to be a factor?
I think it's going to be arguably everything. In some ways, it's 50-50 because Diaz's style has typically been what works against Anthony Pettis as far as the pressure boxing, and then Pettis' style is kind of tough for Diaz because obviously the leg kicks. But I feel like with Nate Diaz, he sort of thrives a lot better in 5-round fights, and I think that Anthony Pettis is sort of going to get his moments. He's going to be a lot more smarter in this fight, and he's going to, by the time the fight ends, Nate Diaz might be picking up steam, picking up momentum, but the fight's going to be over, and I think the decision's going to go to Anthony Pettis. You also got to go with momentum. Like, we don't know whether Nate Diaz has gotten better over these last 3 years, and typically, if you're looking historically at MMA, that's not the case. Is cage rust a factor? I feel like if anybody could bounce back from it would be Nate Diaz, but Anthony Pettis has looked so good, and even if you're looking at intangibles, during media day and the whole of fight week, he just looks so much more alive. He says that he doesn't have to wear glasses anymore because he's not cutting so much weight and his eyes are sunken in. He just looks so much more fresher, and also physically, he's a lot less chubbier. He looks like he's packed on some more muscle. He's still quite lean, so we may be seeing a better version of than what we saw against Wonderboy Thompson.
So I want to get back to that Wonderboy Thompson fight for just a second here, because he had what could have been the KO of the year. George Moss would all be damned in this discussion, but he could have had the KO of the year, what he did against Wonderboy. Yeah. But before that, it was a rough night for him. Yeah. It was a rough night for him, and it didn't look like his welterweight debut was going that nicely. Do you think that Diaz saw something there and said, hey, let's make this fight? Because keep in mind, this was a fight that Camp Diaz and Camp Pettis came together and brought to the UFC. So it's like they both see something within one another that says, hey, this is a winnable fight, this is a big enough name, let's do it.
I think this comes down to, for me, can Nate Diaz make an impact on the outside? Because with a guy like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, what made him so successful was he was dangerous. When Anthony Pettis was out of that range, out of that close range, he was able to hit him with shots as Anthony was trying to get in his groove. So we all know that Nate Diaz is absolutely brutal with his pressure boxing. When you're close to him, he's going to start, Stockton slapping you, pointing the finger, getting momentum. But can he do something to Anthony Pettis when he's keeping his distance, trying to land leg kicks and staying out of that close boxing range? If he's able to do that, if he's able to gain momentum, then use that momentum to get him a bit closer, use that momentum to get him to say, stuff it. You know what? I'm going to abandon my game plan. I'm going to go in there, Tony Ferguson style, and we're just going to battle, and we're going to bite down on our mouth guard, and whoever's still standing there is going to win. That's what Nate Diaz needs to do. But make no mistake about it, after watching the open workout, you probably saw the blueprint for how that matchup is going to go. He's going to stay on the outside, he's going to try and pick him apart with those leg kicks. So it's going to be very, very interesting. And also, the turmoil and the beef is in there, which I think is a detriment to Nate Diaz. Because before, it was kind of like, there was heat, and both guys were like, this is personal and stuff like that. And then leading into it, it's like, it's a misunderstanding. Like, both guys respect each other and stuff. That's great for Anthony Pettis, not so good for Nate Diaz. Has to build that momentum and that sort of beef in that octagon to sort of get Anthony off his game.
Yeah, it should be a fun one there. I mean, at the very least, we're promised some really good action, some really good violence there. But when we're talking about true violence in its scariest form, we got to talk about Yoel Romero, Paulo Costa, third fight from the top. I'm kind of afraid to sit there cage side, man. There's going to be a lot of muscle. There's going to be a lot of shaking of the cage, a lot of chaos, man. What are you expecting from this one?
Dude, it's going to be absolutely fantastic seeing these guys come together. It's just so great to see the middleweight division have all these great organic matchups. Like Robert Whittaker versus Israel Adesanya is something that rarely comes together because obviously you get the same people having title shot after title shot after title shot. Or this guy has to always be in the title shot because he's popular. I feel like this is another one of those great matchups. You got Yoel Romero versus Paulo Costa. Who would have thought? Maybe a couple of years down the line that fight would never happen. Who knows how much Yoel has left. I'm genuinely excited to find out, what does Paulo Costa have? huge step up in competition. You think Yoel Romero is going to go out there and get it done. He's been looking great. He cut extra weight just to prove a point that he deserves that title shot. You know, in the media day, he's ready to go. And also mentally, when these guys are having, you know, stare downs, for example, at the media day, Costa's kind of trying to, he's saying it's personal, but then he's trying to shake Yoel Romero's hand and make sure things are cool. So it's going to be fascinating to see if this guy, Costa, can come out and make a statement. And if he does make a statement, we may be looking at another huge star in the division that's young, that's new, that's fresh. So that's going to be great. If Yoel Romero can do it, he better hope that Robert Whittaker doesn't beat Israel Adesanya in Australia.
So definitely a huge step up, as you said, for Paulo Costa. But I'm of the mind that this might be a bit too much for him at this phase. The last we saw him, he defeated Uriah Hall, and he's had noted issues as far as mentally just being there in the fight, and we saw how much of a back-and-forth fight that was. I mean, have you seen anything from Paulo Costa that leads you to believe that he could get his hand raised against Yoel Romero?
I think it's a tough one. I think Yoel Romero is by far the more proven guy. The only thing is, Yoel Romero, he had this tactic against Robert Whittaker where he was very defensive, he kind of did a whole lot of nothing, and sort of wore whatever Robert Whittaker was throwing, and then he sort of exploded, and it was like an atom bomb of just pure violence. The thing is, Robert Whittaker's a lot more tactical, and I think Paulo Costa will come in there sort of more guns blazing and try and blitz him. And if that happens, Yoel Romero, he can't use that tactic. He can't just kind of hang back and eat it. He's going to have to fight back. He's going to have to potentially leave himself open, you know, create those openings, and amidst the chaos, this is why I kind of feel like it's a 50-50 fight. I think it's going to be pretty quick, first, second round, and like Dennis said, we may be seeing the next Brazilian superstar in Paulo Costa.
This is sorry to cut you off, man, but this is a great point that Casper just made. This is a guy that once told us that he lets people take him down because he wants them to get tired. So this is a guy that takes risks in fights. You know, maybe he'll let Paulo Costa throw some shots and he'll try and wear him. He's a bit older. Maybe Costa's got a lot more power than we thought. Maybe he can catch him. The other thing that's sort of about Costa is, although mentally it looks like pulling back a little bit when these guys have stare downs, whenever you spoke to him, whenever we spoke to him, this is a guy that's already planning a trip to Australia. And this is a guy that believes without a shadow of a doubt, you're going to see the best Paulo Costa and you're going to see an absolute war. He wants to make Yoel Romero pay. So mentally, he believes he's going to go out there and make a statement. What does that mean? Well, that means he's going to be going in there and he's going to be going for broke, which is going to make this thing interesting. Whereas where a lot of people, when they're fighting Yoel Romero, I mean, even Robert Whittaker talks about the fact that, hey, man, fighting Yoel Romero is no fun day at the office. You know what I mean?
Right.
So this, but Paulo Costa is like, I want to go out there, I want to make him pay, I want to make a statement, I want to go to Australia, I want to become the champion. I could beat Robert Whittaker and I could beat Israel Adesanya in the same night. That's the kind of confidence that beats Yoel Romero.
You know, I'm kind of little conflicted on this one because I have a feeling that no matter what happens with this fight, we're still not going to learn a whole lot. Because say Romero wins, hey, he was supposed to be the guy who didn't have a high ranking coming in, who hadn't seen nearly the level of competition that he provides. But if Costa wins, it's like, hey, Romero's 42 years old, has had noted issues on the scale. He looked pretty drawn out, although he did come under the 185-pound limit. So it's just that it's going to be entertaining, and I think at least for the right now, let's just be satisfied with that.
Well, yeah, like I think you're absolutely 100% right, but I still feel like
of course I am.
Goes without saying. But I feel like
your show, damn it.
the impression that people have of Yoel Romero is this big scary boogeyman. So like all those factors aside, I think if Paulo Costa is able to beat him, the narrative is going to be like, oh my God, he just beat the Yoel Romero, the guy that Robert Whittaker, you know, took to 2 decisions and wasn't able to finish.
I just think it's a bummer that Yoel Romero told us that he doesn't want to go up to light heavyweight, because that is, you know, at 42 years old, and he could be older, who knows how accurate those things are, but he looks about 25, let's be honest. I mean, who knows how much longer he'll be around for. There's some great matchups for him at light heavyweight. He said he's hung out with John Jones and he knows his family, said he doesn't want to fight John Jones. In my opinion, he's probably got one of the best chances of beating a guy like John Jones. And also, I'd love to see him just not cut all that weight. I'd love to see what he looks like in that octagon. We see what he's like when he's depleted at the age of 42. What would he look like if he's got all of those, you know, if he's hydrated, if he's ready to go, if he's not focusing on doing that?
Spending more time in the weight room, like just what the scary things that can happen with a Yoel Romero that isn't depleting himself in the sauna.
There's better cardio as well.
Right. I mean, there's so many possibilities, but we'll wrap things up in a second here, fellas, and definitely appreciate your time and joining me today. But before we go, give me your sleeper fight or sleeper fighter that's ranked elsewhere on this card?
Dude, I'm really enjoying the rise of Super Sadiq Youssef here. He fought in Adelaide. He's got a crazy story where his brother passed away and his mother was trying to basically hide it from him as to not rattle him ahead of, obviously, a big fight. So I'm really curious how he does this weekend.
Yeah, and Sadiq Youssef, notable being a DMV native, so I got to shout out to DC area, PG County in the house. All right, so Dennis, what's your sleeper fight or sleeper fighter on this?
Yeah, look, Derek Brunson's back. He's looking to make a statement. His losses came to some of the biggest guys in the division, and people have written him off. Well, he's back. He's fighting a guy like Ian, who's super tough, has an interesting history himself, and in that stare down is going to bring the heat. What kind of Derek Brunson are we going to see? Is he going to be making a comeback? Has he figured things out? Does he have a different strategy? I believe that Derek Brunson still has a lot left to offer this sport, but then at the same time, Ian is coming in on this,
Five-fight win streak?
Yeah, with this win streak, and he's just looking mean and ready to go. And dude, this middleweight division, I mean, are you kidding me right now? Jared Cannonier, I mean, just the number of young fighters coming in. We just mentioned Costa. It's really exciting.
Manson.
Can you imagine?
Gastelum's still out there.
You know what we were
talking
talking about before, like we were in there. Chael Sonnen was in that division. You know what I mean? And that's like Chael Sonnen, all those guys, the old school guys. That was middleweight that we remember. Nate Marquardt, all these guys. Now you got these guys that can do everything. They're all young. They're all hungry. They're ready to go. So it's super exciting times at middleweight.
Definitely, man. And now my sleeper fight for this card has to be Rafael Assunção, Corey Sandhagen. Yeah. I think it's criminal that a fight like this that has obvious title implications in a very exciting division at bantamweight is buried so low on the card. It's I want to say it's on the ESPN prelims, but it's the second to last one.
Yeah.
I mean, this is either featured prelim or main card material there, but should be an exciting fight either way. But anyway, the beautiful city of Anaheim is happy to have the legends of Australia standing next to me. So you know what to do. Stick to Sherdog.com for all the latest updates on UFC 241. Go to Submission Radio. Check out the great work that my guys are doing here around this event and just in general. Some great stuff from my fellas here. But you know what you got to do. You must stay beautiful. You must stay positive. And by all means, you got to stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.